And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited. There's a clear cause and effect here that is as neat and predictable as a law of physics. As government expands, liberty contracts.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
The Liberty Podcast is brought to you by Proven Arms and Outfitters, specializing in rifles, pistols, tactical gear, and more. Learn more at ProvenOutfitters.com.
Well, welcome back to the Liberty Podcast. It is Thursday, May 9, 2024. You found us again, and we're certainly glad that you have. The Liberty Podcast, by the way, is presented by Proven Arms and Outfitters. You know what they do? They specialize in rifles, pistols, tactical gear, and a lot more. You can learn all about Proven by going to ProvenOutfitters.com on Al Gore's amazing internet. Okay, we've got a lot to get to. Let's get to it. Well, Joe Biden has had a big week of A, saying exactly what he wants to do, but not why, and B, saying things that are patently false. Neither one is particularly useful for the leader of the free world. Wall Street Journal. Call it what it is. A U.S. arms embargo against Israel. Now? That's the astonishing story this week as the Biden administration confirms it is blocking the delivery of weapons to our main ally in the Middle East. Who does this? A deranged person who's trying to pander to a few far-left radical votes who are all for the destruction of Israel? I guess. I don't know. The Wall Street Journal continues. The administration would like to focus on the denial of 2,000-pound bombs, which it says are too destructive. Never mind that a professional force can employ them in a manner that restricts the radius of damage. Of course. Mr. Biden is also halting a shipment of 500-pound bombs and holding up joint direct attack munitions, which convert unguided bombs into precision smart bombs. Politico, which is a digital news organization, reports that small diameter bombs are being withheld as well. The Journal adds that the Biden administration has been sitting on a deal that includes tank shells and mortar rounds. The message from the White House, in other words, is that Israel shouldn't have large bombs or small bombs, dumb bombs or smart bombs, and let it do without tanks and artillery too. Now isn't a good time to send the weapons, you see, because Israel would use them. Yes, they will, and they need to. And by the way, the editorial also points out that the support for Israel was overwhelming in both houses of Congress on a bipartisan basis. So the Biden regime is acting in a dictatorial sense in this matter. And that's exactly what they say Donald Trump is and was, a dictator who has no regard for the way that things are structured and done in Washington. Well, apparently, neither does the monstrous Biden regime and its denial of Israel's quest to wipe Hamas off the face of the earth, ladies and gentlemen. That is the end goal and the end game. Now, let's keep going. You're going to love this. Oh, boy. So Biden was up in Wisconsin, where he had an exclusive one-on-one interview with a CNN anchor woman named Erin Burnett. Not exactly vying to replace the legends of like Walter Cronkite and real guys, Huntley and Brinkley, and many others that she'll never touch. But Biden's up there in Wisconsin. He's got his talking points, and she's teeing up some questions, and he's giving her answers that are full of deceptive lies. and she's standing there like a bobblehead doll. Here's the big one. Joe Biden is misremembering again, say our friends at the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. Here's our 81-year-old president on CNN, and they quote, Biden says, no president has had the run we've had in terms of creating jobs and bringing down inflation. It was 9% when I came to office. 9%. Wagging his bony little finger, he told Burnett. Sorry, Joe. Inflation wasn't 9% when Trump left office. You're only off by about a factor of 4. Actually, inflation was near a modern era low of 1.4% when the Biden regime stole the election and occupied the White House. 1.4%, not 9%. And then they show this tidy little chart, which will be popping up here in a moment, that shows precisely the huge uptick in inflation almost immediately in 2021 when he was, redecorating the Oval Office with portraits of Che Guevara and Karl Marx. So, and it only got worse from there. The whole thing was a bad campaign ad for the Biden regime, which is desperate to convince people in Wisconsin and Michigan and other swing states that happy days are here again, even though people with fully formed brains certainly know better. All right, moving on with our hit parade today. Our great treasurer, NC Treasurer Dale Folwell, you might call him a lame duck. He ran for governor. He was defeated in the primary, as many expected. He's been a stellar treasurer, and he has never let up, and he's not about to in these final months of his treasury. Here's what came out of his office on May 8th. North Carolina State Treasurer Dale Folwell released a report finding that designated 340B, as in Bravo, hospitals bill state employees an average price markup of 5.4 times their discounted acquisition costs for oncology cancer drugs. Hospitals generated average profits as high as $13,600 per claim on cancer drugs paid for by the North Carolina State Health Plan for teachers and state employees. Treasurer Folwell is calling on state and federal lawmakers to reform the drug pricing program and to provide hospital price relief to state employees and taxpayers. Now, he reminds us that as with any government program, they start out in many cases with good intentions, as did this one. The 340B Bravo program was originally created to help safety net providers serve low-income and rural communities, but it has become the second largest federal prescription drug program in the nation. Now, that's a big-time dubious distinction. Under the program, hospitals can purchase most outpatient drugs with an average 34.7% discount from manufacturers. But under current law, the hospitals have no legal obligation to pass these discounts on to patients or to invest the savings in vulnerable communities. Well, if ever, my friends, that was a call to action for our General Assembly, this is it. Let's see if the conservatives in our state Senate and House will heed the call of State Treasurer, conservative fiscal Republican Dale Folwell. This is an outrage that they are using a program intended to help people who could not afford life-saving drugs. Instead, they're using it to pad their profits to the tune of millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. It's nauseating. Thank you, Treasurer Folwell. And we hope that when Governor Mark Robinson is elected governor this fall, that he will immediately call upon you and appoint you to a very special role to help him maintain fiduciary responsibility in our state. You don't need the title of treasurer to do that for the governor. Let's get that done, okay? Free advice to the Robinson campaign. All right, this is a very sad story, folks, coming out of Florida this week. Now, keep in mind the context here. We have watched for the past several weeks campus after campus being overrun by thuggish rioters, some of them students, some of them paid rioters, joining in the throngs, overwhelming anti-Semitism, death to America, death to Israel sentiments. And these people have largely been unpenalized and unpunished for their actions. Some have been arrested, and very often they are then immediately released by feckless law enforcement in the big cities like New York and Los Angeles. But here's this story, it'll break your heart. A Florida man being prosecuted for the alleged assault of 2 police officers at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, has committed suicide, according to a police report. David Kennedy Homel, 55, of Umatilla, Florida, died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound sometime between 6 p.m. on 17 April and 8:55 a.m. on 18 April, according to Panama City Police Department reports obtained by the Epoch Times newspaper. On May 7, so just a couple of days ago, federal prosecutors in Washington filed a death notice and a motion for abatement of the prosecution. Unbelievable. This is so sad. Mr. Homel was arrested by the FBI in Orlando on January 10, 2024, 3 years after January 6th, and they're still hunting these people down. He was charged in a criminal complaint with 8 January 6th offenses, including the controversial and likely to be overturned by the Supreme Court 20-year felony of corruptly obstructing an official proceeding. None of these people that entered the Capitol did that on January 6th. Bogus. Other charges, including assaulting police, etc. Now, we're not saying that this guy was using his best judgment on January 6th. A lot of people were fired up that day. It was an emotional day. And maybe there should have been arrests and certain punishments, but within the normal parameters of the law. Prosecutors allege that Mr. Homel struck 2 police officers with a plastic flagpole on the Capitol's West Plaza on January 6th. Okay. Now, I haven't seen a lot of plastic flagpoles on these college campuses in the last several weeks. I've seen broken glass. I have seen objects hurled at innocent people. I have seen fires set. I have seen the American flag burned. I have seen the Israeli flag burned, and I have seen the Palestinian flag raised atop a flagpole at UNC Chapel Hill, just up the road from your humble podcast studio. But I haven't seen a lot of plastic flagpoles being used, and I haven't seen anybody being charged with years in prison for any of it. And now this gentleman has taken his life because his country has betrayed him. Betrayed him. And I pray for the day when Donald Trump is back in the White House and all of these January 6th patriots are cleared for good once and for all. This has got to stop. This is third world happening before our eyes. All right, moving on. It's coming, folks. You know, it's an election year, and you know what that means, right? It's an election year. And even though we have seen suddenly this remarkable coming to grips by mainstream media that maybe, just maybe, the untested experimental mRNA jabs that were forced upon people during the pandemic, maybe they have caused injuries and even death. Maybe the AstraZeneca jab causes blood clots. Well, that went from being a maybe to an absolutely this week when AstraZeneca withdrew the jab from circulation. What does that tell you? All of this stuff is finally being reported by both the mainstream media. Chris Cuomo, former CNNer, who mocked anyone who refused to be jabbed during the pandemic, mocked them. Now he's over at some rinky-dink new cable network called News Nation, and he's admitting in front of God and everybody that he is ill, sick, due to the lingering effects of the injuries he suffered when vaccinated, quote unquote. He's saying it out loud in front of everybody. It's happening. But what are the overlords doing? Are they expressing their remorse? Has Anthony Fauci come forward and said, "I'm really sorry"? Oh no. They're just ramping up the next fear-mongering narrative, and here it comes. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. Disease Control and Prevention. How about the Centers for Liberty, Trampling, and Tyranny? How about that? CDC has warned that avian flu viruses, quote, pose potential for pandemic levels. Pandemic potential, end quote. As a new analysis suggests that one dairy worker's case could represent the first known instance ever, now in 2024, the first known instance of transmission of bird flu from animals to humans, marking a significant evolution of the virus. A CDC technical report says bird flu presents still, quote, a low risk to the general public for now, end quote, but that viruses have caused, quote, severe respiratory disease in infected humans worldwide, and that it is, quote, likely dairy workers identified as having symptoms are refusing to be tested, leaving officials with gaps in their knowledge. Oh yeah, let's start testing everybody again. Very good idea. In a recent report in the New England Journal of Medicine, researchers, including some from the CDC, concluded that there is, quote, strong evidence, end quote, that a Texas farm worker contracted the avian bird flu from sick cattle, which would mark the first known instance of animal to human transmission. Okay, here we go. You see where we're going with this? A few months before another election? But there's more. Now the Food and Drug Administration is joining the chorus. Writes John Leake in his wonderful Substack blog, posted today, May 9. I suppose it's still too early to declare, here we go again, but the old saying does come to mind. FDA Commissioner Robert Califf testified before Congress that the FDA is prepping countermeasures for the possibility that the H5N1 avian influenza will mutate sufficiently to make the jump to humans. I wonder if we are entering a new era of emerging infectious diseases in which mankind is afflicted with a pandemic every 4 years, coinciding with U.S. presidential elections. I wish I could just laugh this off as absurd, but what do we know from the last several years? This is what they need to control society and the outcomes of an election, especially one as monumental as this one. Clicking on Dr. Califf's Twitter profile, writes John Leake, I was surprised to see him praising former Principal Deputy FDA Commissioner Janet Woodcock. Woodcock colluded with former BARDA head Rick Bright to make hydroxychloroquine unavailable to ambulatory patients during the pandemic, and is therefore almost certainly responsible for multiple needless hospitalizations and deaths. Yeah. If H5N1 does indeed mutate, naturally or through an accelerated process where? In a lab? Gee, when did we ever hear that? It appears the pandemic response will be directed by the same clique of public health bureaucrats with zero accountability and whose failures always propel them upward. Well, they ought to be going downward to the gates of hell, in my opinion. Like the previous FDA commissioners Stephen Hahn and Scott Gottlieb, Dr. Califf will doubtless have a remunerative, why do they use words like that? He'll make money waiting for him at a major vaccine producer or venture cap firm investing in vaccines after he leaves the FDA. Watch this story carefully, except there's a difference. This time we're prepared. We know what their potential is to hijack a manageable potential flu and turn it into a global crisis. And don't forget that the World Health Organization, the WHO, they ought to be called the WTF, but we'll save that for another day. The WHO will be meeting later this month to once again encourage the world to adopt a global pandemic treaty, which will empower the WHO to have sole authority the next time the big pandemic comes. And of course, they'll make sure that's sooner than later. All right, now let's switch it up to a local story. As you know, it's a tough job being on the Moore County Board of Education, or for that matter, any Board of Education. We know that. It's a tough job. Public education is deeply broken and flawed. There's a lot of blame to go around. Certainly, it's not a lack of funding, as the left always says. Just pay the teachers more money and everything will be fine. Never works, never works. But we understand that despite the best efforts of our current school board, which is largely a conservative-leaning group, we've learned that it's still hard to undo some of the poor-performing schools in our county. Here is board member David Hensley. Now, he's concerned that at the Robbins Elementary School in northern Moore County, they have been perpetuating a program whereby the Hispanic Spanish-speaking students are taught in Spanish, in their native tongue, while non-Hispanic English-speaking students are taught in English. This has been going on and has not provided any plausible outcomes. In the meeting recently of the School Board of Education, David Hensley challenged the merits of the dual language program. He said the effort was implemented 9 years ago, and yet the Robbins School is still scored as a low-performing school by the state. It is designated now as a restart school. That means they're trying to undo the mess they're in. It is provided a restart designation because it has been receiving a D or an F growth score for 9 years or more. So David Hensley, quoted by the Pilot newspaper, we hope he's quoted accurately, says, quote, "This started in Robbins Elementary in 2015, yet 9 years later, they are a chronically low-performing school. They are a restart school. So insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. They've had 9 years for this great experiment to turn Robbins around, and it hasn't done it," end quote. Reports the Pilot. Hensley then claimed that dual language programs are illegal according to North Carolina general statute. Quote, "It's simply illegal to have a dual language immersion program in North Carolina. My reading of the law, dual language programs are not permitted under North Carolina law, but we have this law that says all classes shall be taught in English." His conclusion, we, Moore County schools, are in violation of the law. How about that? But the reporter says that Hensley is claiming that the school is in violation of the law, and yet he read the law in the meeting. No gray area when you read the law. So, homework assignment for the Moore County Board of Education and the administrators, starting with Superintendent Locklear. Let's stop breaking the law, and let's start turning the school around by taking steps that will make a difference. We need these kids to learn English so that they can succeed in education and in life. Okay? You know, we heard all this mumbo jumbo about how we didn't want to alter the academic calendar so that the school year would start at a more appropriate time later in the month of August. We heard that we couldn't do that because it's against the law. And now we've been breaking the law in at least one school for 9 years. How dumb do we look? Anyway, this is why I have a hard time watching these school board meetings, because it's getting more and more difficult to grapple with the many areas that are still in need of rapid turnaround. Rapid turnaround. All right, I want to leave you with a very upbeat, out the door message. The other day, the calendar in my smartphone was very smart, and it reminded me that a friend of mine was celebrating his birthday. His name is Ralph Redmond. Way back in 2007, he was recognized by the Pilot newspaper as one of the newsmakers of the year. He was actually recognized as a member of a 4-person group adoringly called the Gadflies. The Gadflies were known for their doing what I just described, attending various council and board meetings around the county and holding elected officials' feet to the fire on key issues of the day. They were recognized as such. And then over the years, my friend Ralph Redmond has been a contributor to the Pilot as a guest columnist. He's submitted letters to the editor, and he has been a staunch, longtime ally of the Republican Party, both in the state and the county, for many, many years. Well, ladies and gentlemen, earlier this week, Ralph Redmond celebrated a birthday. Ralph Redmond is 98 years old. He still drives a car, very well, I might add. He's still a close monitor of local news and school boards and other elected official boards. He still contacts me from time to time, wanting to know if he's the only one who thinks the Democrats are losing their minds. And I assure him, no, Ralph. There's a lot of us who know that. But I want to say happy birthday to my friend Ralph Redmond. And I told him I'll be calling him next year on the 99th, and then I'm going to throw a big party for the 100th in 2 years' time. Thank you again for joining us at the Liberty Podcast. We're here every week for you, and we hope you'll come back and see us the next time.